Maxwell Reed had everything a man could want. His name was synonymous with American entrepreneurial success, a tech mogul who had transformed a small startup in Silicon Valley into a global empire. At 42, he commanded boardrooms from San Francisco to Boston, with the same calculated precision that had earned him billions. His striking features, the piercing gray eyes, salt and pepper hair, and athletic build, maintained by pre-dawn workouts, made him a regular on financial magazine covers. From the penthouse of his glass tower in Manhattan, Maxwell could see the city that had once intimidated him now lying at his feet. He owned significant portions of it: luxury condominiums, commercial properties, tech incubators, and research facilities. His influence stretched across America's economic landscape, and politicians from both parties sought his favor. Yet beneath the trappings of success, Maxwell Reed was troubled. His empire was secure, his vision realized, but there was no one to inherit what he had built. No legacy beyond the cold silicon and steel that bore his name. "Mr. Reed, your 4 o'clock appointment is here," his assistant's voice interrupted his thoughts through the intercom. Maxwell turned from the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Send them in." Dr. Eleanor Chen entered, her expression professionally neutral. A reproductive specialist with impeccable credentials, she had been hand-picked after exhaustive research. She placed a folder on his desk. "The candidates meet all. Your specifications, Mr. Reed," she said, her voice betraying no judgment about the unusual arrangement. "Each has undergone extensive physical and psychological screening." Maxwell nodded, not bothering to open the folder. "And the legal documents?" "Completed by your attorneys. The surrogate will have no claim to the child and must maintain absolute confidentiality." He glanced at the folder. "Is this necessary? I assumed you would select the optimal candidate." Dr. Chen's professional facade cracked slightly. "Mr. Reed, this isn't like selecting the specifications for a new product. These are women who will be generously compensated," he interrupted. $2 million for 9 months and discretion. The arrangement is mutually beneficial." She hesitated. "Will you be involved during the pregnancy?" Maxwell's expression hardened. "The surrogate will have the best medical care, security, and accommodations. My involvement will be limited to necessary decisions." Dr. Chen nodded, accepting defeat. "We'll proceed according to your wishes." After she left, Maxwell returned to the window. He had seen relationships deteriorate under the weight of his ambition, most recently with Victoria, his ex-fiancée, who had walked away after 3 years, claiming she couldn't compete with his empire. He hadn't stopped her. Love was a distraction. Marriage a compromise he wasn't willing to make, but an heir was non-negotiable. Zoe Walker clutched her worn backpack tighter as she exited the subway at Times Square. The January wind cut through her thin jacket, but she couldn't afford to spend money on a taxi. Every dollar was precious now. 6 months ago, Zoe had left her small town in Georgia with a journalism degree and dreams of making it in New York. Now her dreams were replaced by urgency. Rent was due, her part-time waitressing job barely covered groceries, and her freelance writing gigs had dried up. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. "Landlord came by again. Says if rent hasn't paid by Friday, we're out." Zoe stared at the screen, a knot forming in her stomach. Friday was 2 days away, and she was still $300 short. She continued walking, the city's indifference weighing on her. New York embraced those who succeeded and discarded those who struggled. She had been naive to think talent alone would be enough. Help wanted signs taunted her from store windows. She'd already applied to 50 jobs that week, but no one wanted an inexperienced journalist with a southern accent. Lost in thought, she almost collided with a woman exiting a sleek office building. "I'm so sorry," Zoe apologized, steadying. The woman who nearly dropped her folders. Dr. Eleanor Chen looked at the young woman, early 20s, pretty despite her obvious exhaustion, with striking blue eyes that stood out against her dark hair. "No harm done," she replied, then hesitated. There was something about this girl, a quiet dignity despite her circumstances. "Are you all right?" Zoe blinked, surprised by the question. "Just job hunting." Dr. Chen studied her. "What's your name?" Zoe Walker. Zoe, would you be interested in participating in a medical study? It pays well. Hope flickered across Zoe's face. What kind of study? It's complicated, but it could solve your financial problems. Dr. Chen handed her a business card. Come to this address tomorrow at 9 a.m. if you're interested. Ask for Dr. Chen. Zoe stared at the card. Manhattan Fertility Institute. I don't understand. Tomorrow 9 a.m. the decision is yours. Dr. Chen hailed a taxi and disappeared into the city's chaos. The Manhattan Fertility Institute occupied 3 floors of a modern medical building on the Upper East Side. Zoe felt out of place among the tasteful furnishings and well-dressed staff. She had spent the morning researching the institute, and Dr. Eleanor Chen. Both were legitimate and highly respected. Dr. Chen is ready for you, the receptionist announced, leading her to a private office. Dr. Chen greeted her with a smile. You came, please sit down. Before we start, Zoe said, I need to know what this is about. Of course, I represent a client seeking a surrogate mother. Zoe's eyes widened. You want me to have someone else's baby? A single man of considerable means wishes to have a child. He's offering $2 million to the surrogate, plus all medical expenses and accommodations during the pregnancy. Zoe felt dizzy. $2 million? The procedure would be gestational surrogacy. You would carry an embryo created from his sperm and a donor egg, so the child would not be biologically related to you. After delivery, you would relinquish all rights to the child. Zoe's mind raced. $2 million would change everything. She could pay off her student loans, support her parents who had struggled since her father's stroke, maybe even start her own magazine. Why me? She asked. You must have professional surrogates. Dr. Chen's expression softened. My client has specific requirements. You fit the profile. Young, healthy, intelligent, no family history of genetic disorders. And she hesitated. There's something about you that feels right. Would I meet him? He prefers to maintain distance. This is a business arrangement, Zoe, nothing more. Zoe stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled before her, the same city that had nearly broken her. $2 million for 9 months of her life. It seemed impossible, yet the contract on Dr. Chen's desk was real. I need time to think, she whispered. Of course, but my client requires an answer within 48 hours. As Zoe left the building, her phone buzzed with another text from her roommate. Landlord changed the locks. Your stuff is in boxes in the hallway, I'm sorry. She stared at the message, then at the business card in her hand. Sometimes survival meant making impossible choices. The next morning, Zoe signed the contract. 3 weeks later, after extensive medical testing and psychological evaluations, she lay on an examination table as Dr. Chen performed the embryo transfer. The pregnancy test will be in 2 weeks, Dr. Chen explained. If successful, you'll move into the accommodations we've arranged. As Zoe left the clinic, a black Tesla Model S pulled alongside her. The tinted window rolled down, revealing a handsome but severe face, piercing grey eyes evaluating her with cold efficiency. Get in, Maxwell Reed commanded, his voice cutting through the winter air. Not knowing what else to do, Zoe obeyed, stepping into a future that would change both their lives forever. The Tesla glided through Manhattan traffic like a phantom. Zoe sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap as she stole glances at Maxwell Reed. His profile was sharp against the city lights, a man carved from ambition and discipline. The pregnancy test was positive, he stated without preamble, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Congratulations. Zoe's breath caught. She had suspected, her body had felt different, but hearing it confirmed made it real. Thank you. Don't thank me, Maxwell replied, his tone businesslike. This is a transaction, not a gift. The car turned onto Fifth Avenue, then into a private underground garage beneath a soaring residential tower. Maxwell led her to a private elevator that opened directly into a penthouse on the 58th floor. This will be your home for the duration, he explained, as they entered a space that seemed more like a museum than a residence. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city, while minimalist furniture in muted greys and whites created an atmosphere of sterile elegance. Zoe stood in the center of the great room, overwhelmed. "It's beautiful." "It's functional," Maxwell corrected. "The security system is state-of-the-art. The staff, housekeeper, chef, and security have signed extensive confidentiality agreements. Dr. Chen will visit weekly for checkups." He walked to a sleek desk and picked up a tablet. "This contains your schedule, dietary requirements, and prenatal regimen. The first payment of $1 million has been deposited into the account you provided. The remainder will be transferred after delivery." Zoe nodded, struggling to process everything. "And you? Will you be visiting?" Maxwell's expression remained impassive. "I'll receive regular updates from Dr. Chen. My presence isn't necessary for your comfort or the baby's development." With that, he turned to leave, pausing only when Zoe called after him. "Mr. Reed, why me?" He looked back at her, his gaze analytical. "Dr. Chen believes you're physically ideal. I believe you understand necessity." Without further explanation, he entered the elevator and disappeared. Zoe stood alone in the silent apartment. She had made a deal with a man who viewed fatherhood as a business acquisition, and now she would spend the next 8 months in a golden cage. Days turned into weeks, and Zoe settled into a routine. Every morning, the chef prepared breakfast, according to her nutritional plan. She spent hours reading in the library or watching the city from the terrace. In the afternoons, a personal trainer guided her through gentle exercises designed for pregnant women. Evenings were quiet, with dinner served promptly at 7. The luxury was undeniable. Organic food, Egyptian cotton sheets, a bathroom larger than her old apartment, but the isolation was suffocating. The staff was polite but distant, clearly instructed to maintain professional boundaries. Dr. Chen's weekly visits became her only meaningful human contact. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Chen asked during her 12th week checkup, concerned by the shadows under Zoe's eyes. "Physically fine," Zoe replied, watching the ultrasound screen where a small form pulsed with life. "But I feel invisible." Dr. Chen's expression softened. "The first trimester is difficult. Things will improve." "It's not that, it's..." Zoe hesitated. "This baby is growing inside me, changing me, and its father doesn't even call to check on us. I'm just a vessel to him." "Maxwell Reed is a complicated man," Dr. Chen said carefully. "His detachment isn't personal." "It feels personal when you're carrying someone's child," Zoe whispered. After Dr. Chen left, Zoe wandered the empty rooms, trailing her fingers over surfaces too perfect to feel lived in. She stopped at the nursery, a room Maxwell had designated but left unfurnished, stating that he would handle those details after the birth. Impulsively, she grabbed her coat and took the elevator downstairs, nodding to the security guard in the lobby. "Ms. Walker, do you need a car?" he asked, clearly uncomfortable with her unscheduled departure. "Just some fresh air, I'll stay close," she assured him. Outside, spring had transformed the city. Zoe walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench, watching families and couples enjoy the sunshine. A young father chased a toddler across the grass, both laughing with abandon. The scene brought unexpected tears to her eyes. What kind of father would Maxwell be? Would he look at his child with the same cold assessment he directed at her, or would something human finally break through his carefully constructed facade? Her phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Hello? Where are you?" Maxwell's voice was tense. "In the park across from the building. How did you... Your security detail notified me when you left. Return to the apartment immediately." Anger flared in Zoe's chest. "I'm pregnant, not a prisoner. I needed some air." "Our agreement includes security protocols," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "If you want to go out, arrangements can be made, but you don't wander off alone." "I'm carrying your child, not state secrets," she snapped. A long pause followed. "Our car will pick you up in 3 minutes. We need to talk." True to his word, a black SUV arrived. 20 minutes later, Zoe was seated across from Maxwell in his downtown office, a corner suite with views of the financial district and the harbor beyond. "You're upset," he stated. studying her with those penetrating grey eyes. "I'm lonely," she corrected. "I spend my days in a beautiful apartment with staff who won't even make eye contact. The father of this baby couldn't care less about either of us, so yes, I'm upset." Maxwell leaned back in his chair, considering her words. "What would you have me do? Play the doting father-to-be? That's not our arrangement." "I'm not asking. Fair theatre, Mr. Reed. I'm asking for basic human connection." Zoe placed a hand on her slightly rounded abdomen. "In a few months, you'll have a child, a person, not a possession. What will you tell them when they ask about their birth? That you acquired them through a business transaction?" Something flickered in Maxwell's eyes. Discomfort, perhaps, or a realization he hadn't considered. "I don't expect you to understand my choices." "Then help me understand," she challenged. "Why do you want a child you seem determined to keep?" At arm's length, Maxwell stood and walked to the window, his silhouette sharp against the city sky. "My father built a modest construction company in Chicago, 60 employees, local contracts. When he passed away, there was no successor prepared. The company was sold off in pieces, jobs lost, his life's work dismantled." He turned to face her. "I won't let that happen to what I've built. So this baby is just insurance for your company?" "This baby is my legacy," he corrected, "something that will outlast me." Zoe stood, fists clenched at her sides. "A legacy isn't a corporate asset, Mr. Reed. It's what you teach your child, the memories you create, the values you instill. If all you want is someone to inherit your stock portfolio, you should have created a trust fund instead of a human being." Maxwell's expression hardened, but before he could respond, his assistant interrupted through the intercom about an urgent call from Tokyo. He hesitated, then nodded to Zoe. "We'll continue this discussion another time. The car will take you back." Zoe left, her emotions turbulent. She had come to New York to make a difference, to tell stories that mattered. Instead, she found herself entangled with a man who had everything except what truly mattered, and carrying a child who deserved better than to be born into emotional bankruptcy. Back at the penthouse, she stood on the terrace as dusk settled over the city. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach, and she made a silent promise to the life growing within her. "You will be loved. Even if it's just by me, you will be loved." 2 days later, Zoe woke to find the penthouse transformed. The living room now contained bookshelves filled with children's literature, from classics to contemporary stories. Her state-of-the-art sound system had been installed, with a library of music spanning classical to gentle folk songs. Most surprising was the nursery. The empty room now held a hand-crafted wooden crib, a rocking chair by the window, and walls painted a soft sea green. A note sat on the dresser, written in precise handwriting. "Ems Walker, you raised valid points. I've arranged for a doula to visit twice weekly. She'll provide companionship and additional support. The security team has been instructed to facilitate daily walks in the park with appropriate measures in place." The nursery was designed by the same firm that created the children's wing at the Metropolitan Museum. The books were recommended by child development specialists. "If you require anything else, please inform my assistant." Zoe read the note twice. It was still transactional, a problem identified and efficiently solved, but it was also the first acknowledgement that she and the baby had needs beyond the physical. It was a small crack in Maxwell Reed's impenetrable wall, and despite herself, Zoe felt a flutter of hope that perhaps more cracks would follow. Summer settled over Manhattan, bringing sweltering heat that made the city shimmer. 5 months into her pregnancy, Zoe's body had transformed. Her slender frame now carried a pronounced baby bump, and her face had softened, gaining a radiance that the staff couldn't help but notice. The doula, Naomi, had become a welcome presence in Zoe's life. A former midwife in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, she brought warmth to the sterile penthouse. "How's our little one today?" Naomi asked during their Tuesday session, helping Zoe into a comfortable position for prenatal. "Yoga, active, Zoe smiled, placing Naomi's hand on her belly. Feel that? Like a tiny drummer. Strong kicks, Naomi nodded approvingly. That's a good sign. They moved through gentle poses, Naomi supporting Zoe as needed. Afterward, they sat on the terrace, enjoying iced herbal tea and the relative cool of the evening. Have you thought about names? Naomi asked. Zoe tensed slightly. That's not my decision to make. Has he said that? He hasn't said much of anything, Zoe admitted. After our argument and the nursery renovation, we've had exactly 2 conversations, both about medical appointments. Naomi's expression was thoughtful. Men like Maxwell Reed don't change overnight, but actions speak louder than words. What do you mean? I mean, Naomi said, that he calls Dr. Chen after every appointment for detailed updates. The security team reports that he drives by the building most evenings, and yesterday his assistant called to verify that the summer air conditioning settings are optimal for a pregnant woman. Zoe's eyes widened. How do you know all this? Naomi shrugged. People talk to old ladies. We seem harmless. The thought of Maxwell checking on her, albeit indirectly, stirred something unexpected in Zoe. She had built an image of him as coldly indifferent, but these small actions suggested something more complex beneath the surface. That evening, unable to sleep in the summer heat despite the perfect climate control, Zoe went to the kitchen for water. To her shock, Maxwell Reed sat at the island counter, laptop open, suit jacket discarded and shirt sleeves rolled up. "Mr. Reed!" she exclaimed, suddenly conscious of her thin nightgown and disheveled appearance. He looked up, equally startled. "Ms. Walker, I apologize for the intrusion. I was reviewing some documents and didn't want to disturb you." "It's your apartment," she reminded him, getting a glass of water to hide her discomfort. "How are you feeling?" he asked after an awkward pause. "Fine, the baby's very active." She hesitated, then added, "Would you like to feel it?" Maxwell's expression froze, but after a moment he stood and approached her. With uncharacteristic uncertainty, he extended his hand. Zoe guided it to the spot where the baby had been kicking. They waited in tense silence until a strong movement pressed against his palm. Maxwell inhaled sharply, his composure slipping to reveal genuine wonder. "That's remarkable," he whispered. "He or she does that a lot now, especially at night." Maxwell withdrew his hand, but the clinical detachment he typically projected had softened. "Do you know the gender?" "No," Dr. Chen offered, "but I thought—" She trailed off. "You thought I should be part of that decision," he finished, surprising her with his perception. Zoe nodded. "It's your child." "Our child," Maxwell corrected quietly, then immediately looked surprised at his own words. The statement hung between them, altering the atmosphere. For the first time, he had acknowledged her role beyond that of a temporary vessel. "Would you like to know?" she asked. Maxwell considered the question with the same intensity he might give a business problem. "No," he finally decided. "Some surprises are acceptable." Zoe smiled, recognizing the concession this represented for a man who planned everything. "I should try to sleep." As she turned to leave, Maxwell called after her, "Ms. Walker, Zoe, the company is hosting a charity gala next weekend at the Metropolitan Museum. If you're feeling well enough, would you consider attending?" The invitation was so unexpected that Zoe momentarily forgot to respond. "I don't have anything appropriate to wear," she finally managed, mentally cataloging her limited wardrobe. "That can be arranged," Maxwell replied. "It would be beneficial for people to see us together before the birth, to establish a narrative." And there it was, the businesslike explanation, the strategic reasoning. Yet Zoe sensed something else beneath the pragmatic facade. "I'll come," she agreed, "but on one condition." His eyebrow raised slightly. "Which is?" "Call me Zoe, not Ms. Walker, at least in private." The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Agreed. Good night, Zoe." "Good night, Maxwell." The following day, a team of stylists arrived at the penthouse with racks of designer maternity gowns. Zoe, who had never worn anything more expensive than a discounted prom dress, found herself swept into a world of fabric swatches and custom alterations. Mr. Reed requested something in blue, the lead stylist explained, holding up a midnight blue gown with delicate silver beading. He mentioned it would complement your eyes. The comment caught Zoe off guard. Maxwell had noticed her eyes? The man who barely looked at her during their infrequent encounters had observed something so personal. The night of the gala arrived with a flurry of activity. Hairstylists, makeup artists, and Dr. Chen for a precautionary checkup all filled the penthouse. By 7, Zoe stood before the mirror, hardly recognizing herself. The blue gown draped elegantly over her pregnant figure, making her look both maternal and sophisticated. Diamond earrings, on loan she was carefully informed, caught the light with every movement. "You look beautiful," Naomi said warmly, having stayed to help her prepare. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up," Zoe admitted. "Sometimes that's what life is," Naomi replied wisely. "We all play roles until they become real." The elevator announced Maxwell's arrival. He stepped into the penthouse wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his usual severity softened by the formal attire. Seeing Zoe, he paused, his controlled expression momentarily slipping to reveal genuine appreciation. "You look," he began, then seemed to recalibrate. "The dress is suitable." Despite the clinical compliment, Zoe caught the admiration in his eyes. "Thank you, you clean up pretty well yourself." In the limousine, Maxwell briefed her on the event, a fundraiser for children's education, hosted by Reed Innovations Charitable Foundation. "Many of my business associates and their spouses will be there," he explained. "They're aware I'm expecting a child, but details have been kept private." "What should I tell people if they ask about us?" Zoe questioned. Maxwell had clearly anticipated this. The truth edited. "We met through mutual connections. We're expecting a child together. Our relationship is private, so we're pretending to be a couple." "We're presenting a united front," he corrected. "These people respect power and cohesion, not romantic details." The Metropolitan Museum's Temple of Dendur provided a stunning backdrop for the gala. As they entered, Zoe felt the weight of curious stares. Maxwell Reed arriving with a pregnant woman on his arm was evidently the evening's most intriguing development. With his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, Maxwell guided her through the crowd, introducing her to a blur of important names: senators, CEOs, philanthropists. Zoe, drawing on her journalism training, asked thoughtful questions and listened attentively, earning approving nods from Maxwell's associates. "She's charming," Zoe overheard an older woman tell Maxwell. "Much warmer than Victoria. You've surprised us all." "Zoe has many qualities I've come to value," Maxwell replied diplomatically, his hand never leaving her back. As the evening progressed, Zoe began to tire, the weight of the baby and the constant socializing taking their toll. Maxwell noticed immediately. "We should leave," he stated, "not a question but a decision." "I'm fine," she protested. "This is important for you." "Your comfort is more important," he replied, surprising her again. He made their excuses to the hosts and escorted her to the waiting limousine. In the privacy of the car, Zoe slipped off her uncomfortable shoes with a sigh of relief. "Thank you. I was starting to feel overwhelmed." Maxwell studied her in the dim light. "You were impressive tonight. Several board members commented on your intelligence and poise. High praise from the corporate world," she smiled. "So did I pass the test? Was I a suitable temporary partner?" Something shifted in Maxwell's expression, a brief flash of what might have been hurt. "That wasn't why I invited you." "No?" Zoe challenged gently. "Wasn't it to establish a narrative?" Maxwell looked out at the city passing by, his profile sharp against the neon lights. "That was part of it," he admitted. "But I also wanted—" He paused, seeming to struggle with unfamiliar territory. "I wanted to see you outside of our arrangement, in a different context." The admission hung between them, more intimate than any physical touch could have been. This was Maxwell Reed stepping, however slightly, beyond the boundaries of their contract, acknowledging something unplanned. "And what did you see?" Zoe asked softly. Maxwell turned to her, his carefully constructed walls momentarily transparent. I saw someone who belongs in that world as much as I do, though for very different reasons. His hand moved tentatively across the seat until his fingers brushed hers. Someone I'm beginning to respect beyond our agreement. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through Zoe. This wasn't in the contract. This wasn't part of their business arrangement. This was something neither of them had anticipated, a connection forming despite all the barriers they had erected. Back at the penthouse, Maxwell walked her to the elevator. "Thank you for tonight," he said formally, retreating behind his professional facade. But as the elevator doors began to close, he impulsively held them open. "Zoe, the baby's room, is there anything else you think it needs?" She smiled, recognizing the question for what it was, an invitation to include her in decisions, to acknowledge her insight. Books about adventure and discovery, not just success and achievement. This child should know there's more to life than boardrooms and balance sheets. Maxwell nodded, absorbing her words. "I'll keep that in mind." As the elevator closed, taking him back to his carefully ordered world, Zoe placed a hand on her stomach. "Your father is full of surprises," she whispered to the baby, "and I think he might have a heart after all." Autumn painted Central Park in fiery hues of red and gold as Zoe entered her 8th month of pregnancy. The penthouse had gradually transformed, no longer the sterile showcase it once was, but a space with signs of life. Books left open on side tables, a knitting project. Naomi had started to teach her, ultrasound images discreetly framed on a shelf. Most surprising was Maxwell's increasing presence. What began as occasional evening visits evolved into regular dinners. He would arrive with work still to complete, but would set it aside to listen as Zoe read aloud from the baby books. Sometimes they would sit in comfortable silence on the terrace, watching the city lights emerge as dusk settled over Manhattan. They never discussed what was happening between them, this gradual shift from contractual politeness to something resembling friendship. Neither seemed willing to acknowledge the unplanned warmth that had developed, as if naming it might break the fragile connection. On a crisp October evening, Zoe was arranging autumn flowers in the living room when Maxwell arrived earlier than usual, his expression troubled. "Is everything all right?" she asked, immediately concerned. He nodded distractedly, just a complicated negotiation in Singapore. His gaze fell on her hands. "You've changed things around here." "I hope you don't mind," Zoe replied. "It felt too perfect before, too unlived in." "I don't mind," he said quietly. "It feels more like a home now." The word hung between them, home, with all its implications of permanence and belonging. Zoe busied herself with the flowers, unsure how to respond. "I brought something," Maxwell said, setting a package on the coffee table. "For the baby." Zoe unwrapped it to find a handcrafted wooden music box exquisitely detailed with constellations and celestial bodies. When opened, it played a gentle lullaby while stars rotated slowly on the ceiling. "It's beautiful," she whispered, deeply touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. "My mother had one similar to it," Maxwell explained, an unprecedented glimpse into his personal history. "She would play it every night when I was young." Zoe studied him, seeing beyond the polished exterior to the child he must have been. "You never mention your family." Maxwell's expression closed slightly. "There's little to mention. My mother passed when I was 12. My father was dedicated to his work." "Like someone else I know," Zoe observed gently. He acknowledged this with a rueful nod. A pattern I'm beginning to recognize isn't entirely healthy. The admission, so contrary to his usual certainty, revealed a vulnerability that moved Zoe. Impulsively, she took his hand and placed it on her belly where the baby was kicking vigorously. "He or she has hiccups," she explained. "Happens almost every evening now." Maxwell's hand remained, his touch warm through the thin fabric of her dress. "Does it hurt?" "No. It's strange but wonderful." She hesitated, then added, "I've been keeping a journal, writing down everything. When the baby moves, what music makes them active, how they respond to different foods or voices." "My voice?" Maxwell asked, surprising her. Zoe nodded. The baby gets very still when you speak, like they're listening intently, just like you do during business calls. Something shifted in Maxwell's expression, a softening around his eyes, a vulnerability he rarely allowed himself to show. "May I see the journal sometime?" "Of course," she agreed. "It's for both of us, for the baby someday too." The moment was interrupted by a sharp pain that made Zoe gasp and double over. "What's wrong?" Maxwell demanded, alarm replacing his usual composure. "I don't know," she breathed, frightened by the intensity of the sudden pain. Without hesitation, Maxwell swept her into his arms and carried her to the elevator. "I'm taking you to the hospital. Dr. Chen will meet us there." The ride to the hospital was a blur of sirens and Maxwell's tense voice on the phone, issuing rapid-fire instructions. Zoe focused on her breathing, trying to stay calm as the pain subsided, then returned with greater force. "It's too early," she whispered, fear evident in her voice. "The baby isn't due for another 6 weeks." Maxwell took her hand, his grip firm and reassuring. "The best medical team in New York is waiting for us. Everything will be fine." At the hospital, Dr. Chen met them at a private entrance, immediately guiding them to a prepared suite. "Braxton Hicks contractions or preterm labor," she explained after examining Zoe. "We'll monitor both of you overnight." As nurses attached fetal monitors and started an IV, Maxwell remained by Zoe's side. His usual commanding presence focused entirely on her comfort. When Dr. Chen suggested he wait outside during a particularly invasive examination, his refusal was immediate. "I'm staying," he stated in a tone that brooked no argument. His eyes met Zoe's. "Unless you want me to go." "Please stay," she whispered, reaching for his hand. Hours later, with the crisis averted and Zoe sleeping peacefully under mild sedation, Maxwell stood by the window of the hospital suite. "Doctor." Chen joined him, her expression contemplative. "She'll need complete bed rest for at least 2 weeks, she advised quietly. "The stress on her system is significant." Maxwell nodded, his gaze fixed on Zoe's sleeping form. "I'll arrange everything." "There's something else," Dr. Chen hesitated. The ultrasound revealed something unusual. Maxwell's attention sharpened. "Is the baby all right?" "The baby is healthy, but," Dr. Chen chose her words carefully, "certain genetic markers in the amniotic fluid suggest the baby may have heterochromia." "In English, doctor?" "Different colored eyes, one blue, one brown or green. It's a genetic mutation, completely harmless but extremely rare, especially in cases where neither biological parent has the condition." She watched his reaction closely. "It's most common in certain Northern European populations." Maxwell's expression remained impassive, but Dr. Chen knew him well enough to recognize the calculation happening behind his composed exterior. "Is there anything else I should know?" "Just that Zoe will need constant support, physical and emotional." After Dr. Chen left, Maxwell pulled a chair beside Zoe's bed and sat, watching the steady rise and fall of her chest. His mind worked methodically through this new information, analyzing its implications with his usual precision. Heterochromia, different colored eyes, a rare genetic mutation. His phone vibrated with an incoming call from his assistant about the Singapore deal, but for the first time in his career, Maxwell Reed let a multi-million-dollar business opportunity go to voicemail. Instead, he opened his laptop and began researching genetic anomalies with an intensity typically reserved for corporate acquisitions. When Zoe woke the next morning, she found Maxwell asleep in the chair beside her. Bed, his normally impeccable appearance rumpled from the night spent in the uncomfortable position. The sight of him, vulnerable, human, stirred something deep within her. "You stayed," she murmured, her voice still rough from sleep. He straightened immediately, fully alert within seconds. "How are you feeling?" "Better. The pain is gone." She smiled weakly. "I'm sorry for the drama." "Don't apologize," he replied firmly. "Dr. Chen says you need complete bed rest for 2 weeks. I've already made arrangements." Zoe nodded, knowing better than to argue with that tone. "And the baby?" "Healthy." Something flickered across his face, a hesitation uncharacteristic of the decisive Maxwell Reed. There was one thing noted on the ultrasound. Alarm flashed across Zoe's features. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," he assured her quickly. "The baby may have heterochromia, different colored eyes. It's completely harmless, just unusual." Relief washed over her. "That sounds beautiful. Actually, like something from a fantasy novel." Maxwell studied her face intently. "It's extremely rare, especially when neither biological parent has the condition." "What are you saying?" Zoe asked, suddenly wary of his intense scrutiny. "I'm not saying anything," he replied carefully. "Just sharing what Dr. Chen told me." But his expression, analytical, questioning, spoke volumes. The implication hung unspoken between them. How could their child have a genetic anomaly that matched neither of them? "You think I've been with someone else?" Zoe stated flatly, hurt creeping into her voice. Maxwell's silence was damning. "After everything, these months together, building whatever this is between us, you still see me as someone who would, break a contract, betray your trust?" Her voice rose with each word, months of complex emotions finding release. "I've never been with anyone else. I've been living in your penthouse with your security team, watching my every move. When exactly would I have had this hypothetical affair?" "Zoe..." "No," she cut him off, tears threatening. "You don't get to Zoe me with that gentle voice when you're questioning my integrity. I agreed to carry your child. I've lived by your rules. I've even..." She hesitated, then forced herself to continue. "I've even started to care for you, despite my better judgment. And this is what you think of me." Maxwell stood and paced to the window, his back to her. When he finally spoke, his voice was controlled, but with an undercurrent of tension. "I had a DNA test run on the amniotic fluid." The words hit Zoe like a physical blow. "Without my consent?" "Standard procedure for high-risk pregnancies," he replied, turning to face her. "The results are conclusive. The baby is mine, biologically. But there's something else, a genetic marker that doesn't align with either of our profiles." "What does that mean?" "It means," Maxwell said slowly, "that something unexpected is happening, and I need to understand it." The chill in his voice triggered something in Zoe, a realization that despite their growing closeness, despite the warmth that had developed between them, Maxwell Reed still approached life as a problem to solve, a situation to control. "Get out," she whispered. "Zoe, get out," she repeated louder this time. "I can't look at you right now. Not when you're looking at me, at our baby, like we're some kind of scientific anomaly to be analyzed." For a moment it seemed he might argue, but instead he nodded curtly and left the room. As the door closed behind him, Zoe curled onto her side, one hand protectively covering her belly. "It's just us now, little one," she whispered through her tears, "and no matter what happens, no matter what color your eyes are, I will always love you." Outside, Maxwell leaned against the corridor wall, something unfamiliar and painful twisting in his chest. For a man who had built an empire on his ability to calculate risk and control outcomes, the feeling of things spiraling beyond his grasp was profoundly unsettling. He pulled out his phone and made a call. "This is Reed. I need everything you can find on rare genetic mutations, specifically heterochromia. And I need my family medical records, everything going back 3 generations." Whatever was happening, whatever this unexpected development meant, Maxwell Reed would approach it as he did everything in life, with methodical determination and a refusal to accept defeat, even if what he was fighting was now inside his own heart. 4 weeks after the hospital incident, Zoe sat in the nursery's rocking chair, watching snow fall gently over Central Park. The penthouse had become her sanctuary and her prison, a space filled with memories of moments shared with Maxwell and haunted by his absence. After their confrontation at the hospital, he had arranged for her return to the penthouse with round-the-clock nursing care but had not visited himself. Daily reports on her condition were delivered to him, and Naomi mentioned that he called each evening for updates, but he remained physically absent. Dr. Chen visited regularly, monitoring both Zoe and the baby with careful attention. Your blood pressure is still elevated, she noted during that morning's checkup. You need to reduce stress. Zoe laughed humorlessly. That's not exactly in my control right now. Dr. Chen's expression softened with sympathy. He's struggling, Zoe. This situation has challenged everything he believes about control and predictability. And what about me? Zoe countered. I'm carrying this child. I'm the one who was accused of infidelity. I'm the one left alone when I need. She trailed off, unwilling to complete the thought. When you need him, Dr. Chen finished quietly. Zoe turned away, unwilling to acknowledge the truth of those words. She had never planned to need Maxwell, Reed to care for him beyond their contractual arrangement. Yet somehow, during these months of proximity, of sharing the miracle of creating life, something had shifted. What began as a business transaction had evolved into something neither of them had anticipated or prepared for. He's been researching day and night, Dr. Chen offered, consulting genetic specialists, reviewing family records. Of course he has, Zoe sighed. Maxwell needs logical explanations, scientific answers. He can't just accept that life is sometimes unexpected. Dr. Chen packed her medical bag thoughtfully. Perhaps. Or perhaps he's looking for answers that will allow him to return without fear. After the doctor left, Zoe returned to the nursery, running her fingers over the carefully selected books, the handcrafted crib, the celestial music box that remained silent since that night. Everything spoke of meticulous planning, of careful consideration, so typically Maxwell, yet with an underlying tenderness that few would associate with the ruthless tech mogul. The doorbell interrupted her thoughts. Expecting Naomi, she was stunned to find Maxwell standing in the doorway, snowflakes melting on his dark coat, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "May I come in?" he asked formally, as though this weren't his own property. Zoe stepped aside wordlessly, her heart racing traitorously at his proximity. Maxwell removed his coat, revealing the casual attire she had never seen him wear before. Jeans, and a simple sweater that transformed him from untouchable CEO to approachable human. In his hands, he carried a worn leather portfolio. "How are you feeling?" he asked, genuine concern evident in his voice. "Better," she replied, maintaining her emotional distance. "The baby is active and growing well." An awkward silence stretched between them until Maxwell spoke again. "I owe you an apology, several actually." The admission, so contrary to his usual certainty, caught Zoe off guard. "You don't owe me anything beyond our contract," she replied, retreating behind the same businesslike facade he had always used. "That's not true," Maxwell said quietly, "and we both know it." He crossed to the living room windows, staring out at the snow-covered park below. "I've spent my life believing that with enough information, enough control, I could predict and manage any outcome. It's how I built my company. It's how I've structured every aspect of my existence." He turned to face her. "And then you happened." "I didn't happen to you," Zoe corrected. "You made a business arrangement." "Yes," he acknowledged. "A logical, controlled solution to perpetuate my legacy. A child without the complications of emotional entanglement." A rueful smile touched his lips. It seemed so straightforward. "Until the baby had the audacity to develop unexpected genetic traits," she challenged. "Until I realized how dangerously close I was to becoming my father," Maxwell countered, surprising her. "A man so obsessed with his legacy that he forgot to actually live." He approached her slowly, as if expecting rejection. "I didn't just disappear these past weeks, Zoe. I've been searching for answers, not just about the baby's genetics, but about myself. About what kind of father I want to be. What kind of man I want to be." He opened the leather portfolio and handed her a faded photograph. It showed a young woman with striking features, one blue eye and one green eye clearly visible despite the age of the image. "My grandmother," Maxwell explained. "My father's mother. She died before I was born, and my father rarely spoke of her. In his quest to be entirely self-made, he distanced himself from his humble beginnings, including his own family history. He produced more documents, medical records, genealogy charts, letters. Heterochromia runs in my paternal line, though it skipped my father and me. It's relatively common in the Scottish Highlands, where my grandmother's family originated before immigrating to America. Zoe studied the photograph, seeing echoes of Maxwell in the woman's determined expression. "Why didn't you just tell me you were researching this?" "Because I needed to be certain," he admitted, "and because I was ashamed, not of my heritage, but of my reaction, of doubting you, of reducing something miraculous to a problem requiring solution." He took a deep breath. "The truth is, Zoe, I've never been good at facing what I can't control, and nothing in my life has felt more beyond my control than how I feel about you." The confession hung in the air between them, transforming the atmosphere in the penthouse. Zoe placed a protective hand over her belly, trying to process his words. "And how do you feel about me?" she asked finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Maxwell moved closer, close enough that she could see the vulnerability in his typically guarded eyes. Terrified, exhilarated, completely unprepared. His hand reached out tentatively to cover hers where it rested on her stomach. "I started this journey seeking an heir. I never expected to find a partner, a family." The baby kicked strongly against their joined hands, as if emphasizing the connection between them. "I can't promise I'll be perfect at this," Maxwell continued. "I've spent too many years valuing control and achievement above emotion and connection. But I can promise that I want to try with you, if you'll give me that chance." Zoe studied him, this complex man who had begun as her employer and somehow become essential to her happiness. "This isn't in our contract," she said softly. "I'd like to negotiate new terms," he replied, a hint of his old confidence returning. "Terms that include words like together and family, and perhaps someday love." Before she could respond, a sharp pain seized her, more intense than anything she had experienced before. Her knees buckled, and Maxwell caught her, alarm replacing the vulnerability in his expression. "The baby," she gasped. "It's time." Hours later, in the pristine delivery suite of Manhattan's most exclusive hospital, Zoe struggled through the final stages of labor. Maxwell never left her side. His usual commanding presence focused entirely on supporting her, holding her hand through contractions, wiping her forehead, advocating fiercely with medical staff when needed. "I can't do this," Zoe cried after particularly painful contraction. "You can," Maxwell assured her, his voice steady and certain. "You're the strongest person I know, Zoe Walker. Stronger than any business adversary I've faced, braver than any risk I've taken." He pressed his forehead to hers. "And you're not doing it alone. We're in this together." With a final, exhausting effort, their child entered the world, tiny, perfect, and announcing their arrival with a powerful cry that made both parents laugh through their tears. "It's a girl," Dr. Chen announced, placing the infant on Zoe's chest. Maxwell stared in wonder at the tiny being they had created. His hand trembled slightly as he reached out to touch her delicate cheek. "She's perfect," he whispered. As the medical team cleaned and examined the baby, Maxwell held Zoe's hand, his expression transformed by an emotion she had never seen him display, pure, unguarded joy. "Thank you," he said simply, words inadequate for the gratitude he felt. When the nurse returned with their daughter, now swaddled in a soft blanket, both parents leaned forward eagerly. The baby's eyes were closed, her tiny features peaceful in sleep. "She has your nose," Zoe observed tiredly. "And your stubbornness, I suspect," Maxwell replied with unexpected humor. She certainly made a dramatic entrance. Just then, as if responding to her father's voice, the infant's eyes fluttered open. One eye was a deep, rich brown, exactly like Maxwell's. The other was a striking blue, a mirror of Zoe's own. Maxwell stared, momentarily speechless. Dr. Chen approached, examining the baby with professional interest. "Complete heterochromia iridum," she confirmed, exactly as the genetic marker suggested. "It's quite beautiful." Zoe waited for Maxwell's reaction, half expecting him to request additional tests or explanations. Instead, he gently stroked their daughter's cheek, wonder replacing analysis in his expression. "She's perfect," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion, "just like her mother." As Zoe cradled their daughter, Maxwell sat beside them on the hospital bed, his arm protectively encircling them both. For a man who had spent his life planning and controlling every outcome, this unexpected family represented the most beautiful uncertainty he had ever embraced. "What should we name her?" Zoe asked softly. Maxwell considered the question with the same intensity he gave to all important decisions, but this time guided by heart rather than logic. "Sophia," he suggested. "It means wisdom." "Sophia Eleanor Reed," Zoe completed, honoring the doctor who had brought them together. "Walker Reed," Maxwell corrected gently. "She should carry both our names. And someday," he added, reaching into his pocket and producing a small velvet box, "perhaps you will too." Zoe's eyes widened as he opened the box to reveal an elegant diamond ring. "This isn't because of the baby," Maxwell clarified, suddenly nervous in a way the boardroom never made him. "This is because you've shown me that true legacy isn't about empires or achievements. It's about connection. It's about love." He took a deep breath. "I'm not asking you to answer now. I'm asking you to consider a new agreement between us. Not a contract with terms and conditions, but a partnership built on something I never believed in until I met you." "And what's that?" Zoe whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Faith," Maxwell answered simply. "Faith that some of life's most beautiful moments come not from control, but from surrender." As snow continued to fall outside the hospital windows, little Sophia yawned in her mother's arms, her mismatched eyes drifting closed. She would grow up to inherit not just her father's business acumen or her mother's creative spirit, but something far more valuable. The knowledge that she had been born not from obligation, but from love. A love that had begun as a business arrangement and transformed into the most valuable asset either of her parents had ever possessed. "Yes," Zoe said finally, shifting their daughter slightly so Maxwell could slip the ring onto her finger. "But on one condition." "Name it," he replied, prepared to agree to anything she asked. Zoe smiled, exhausted but radiant. "That you accept that not everything in life can be negotiated, controlled, or predicted. That sometimes the most beautiful outcomes are the ones we never planned for." Maxwell Reed, tech mogul, billionaire, and now father, looked at the two most important people in his world and made the easiest decision of his life. "Deal," he whispered, sealing the promise with a kiss that felt like coming home. In the years that followed, Reed Innovations would continue to transform the technological landscape, but its founder's greatest innovation would be the transformation within himself, from a man who built an empire based on silicon and steel, to one who discovered that true legacy is measured not in market share, but in moments of connection, of vulnerability, of love. And little Sophia Walker Reed, with her mismatched eyes that reflected both her parents, would grow up knowing that she was never simply an heir to a fortune, but the living embodiment of the most valuable lesson her father ever learned, that some treasures cannot be acquired through careful planning, only through opening one's heart to life's most beautiful uncertainties. Conclusion. Fimda Historia. Dear listeners, we hope Maxwell and Zoe's journey from a cold business arrangement to a heartfelt connection has moved you as much as it moved us to create it. Their story reminds us that sometimes life's most precious gifts come in unexpected packages, and that true legacy isn't built in boardrooms, but in the quiet moments of vulnerability and love. For more emotional stories that explore the complexities of modern relationships, we've prepared a special playlist you can find by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed Legacy of the Heart, please subscribe to our channel and give this video a thumbs up. Every day we bring you unique narratives that delve into the human experience in all its complicated glory. What was your favorite moment in Maxwell and Zoe's story? Did you suspect the twist about Sophia's heterochromia? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Your engagement helps our storytelling community grow and inspires us to create even more compelling content for you. Until our next journey together, remember that sometimes the most beautiful chapters of our lives are the ones we never planned to write.